even like on Shaw Multicultural channel, we don't produce any of the content that we have. We have external producers from the ethnic communities producing these shows, often on near to no budget or volunteers or whatever. But only a small portion of our programming is news. A lot of it is dramas. And a lot of it is, you know, dramas that are shot locally, just down here. We have one that's really, really popular, and it's just shot in Surrey. It's in a house in Surrey. And it's one of our biggest programs. So, I mean, the content is there if CBC or Global or whatever wants to seek it out. It's just giving them that airtime, right? And that's probably why they come to us, because they're like, okay, we have this awesome, you know, show about a South Asian family in Surrey, and we want to put this on, but we don't have a voice, so we go to Shaw Multicultural channel, right? So,
I have a question actually just about mainstream media for the media people out there, and it's kind of around just like kind of the economics of it, but you know, you always think of the lowest common denominator, and then wanting to get the broadest audience, which is most likely the white audience. How much does that really direct those mainstream CBC, CTV, Global? Is that still, because you say how Little Mosque on the Prairie saved CBC, and that's farthest from that. Well, that's the thing. So is it just that they're still that far back in their...
Well, the actual challenge is that all major mainstream broadcast media is still measured by Nielsen's. And we all know, that all the professionals in the media anecdotally know that Nielsen's does not reflect the viewing habits of a multicultural Canada. It reflects the viewing habits of a very specific cohort, stay-home moms, people who don't move a lot. It doesn't reflect youth. So even if every university student watched a particular show, Nielsen's wouldn't even pick it up. So unless they were living in a home that, you know, well-to-do family, stay-home mom, and they'd been there, and they're already Nielsen's coders. So as a result of that, the results are biased, and so we know that. So the joke with Fairchild, with the owner of Fairchild, is that according to Nielsen's, no one watches my programming. But if you look at my bank book, we know who's watching my programming. I have a lot of people. So there's actually a structural, some would consider it a structurally racist situation in the U.S. The Hispanic community did file a class action suit against Nielsen's for misrepresentation of the Hispanic community, and they won. And are we as Canadians prepared to do the same at some point? I think at some point we will have to. Otherwise, things won't change. And the numbers won't reflect it. And they're forced to use the numbers because that's how they make their money. That's how they rate their, their ratings. Other stations like Omni, which formerly Channel M, they had to come up with their own ways to measure their viewership. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to do business. So there are ways to do this, but the conventional ways, they're not reflecting Canada.
What is the face of CRTC?
What is the
face? I mean, who is CRTC? Who is behind that policy making? That would be very interesting.
That's a good question, and I think like most regulators, in every country, they're supposed to be independent, and representing the interest of Canada, whatever that means, however you define that, and because sometimes I talk to my students and I said, we are often concerned, the CRTC is concerned about Canadian heritage, Canadian content and stuff like that. I said, what exactly is that Canadian heritage? And they search for answers in their pockets and they don't find any, because it's like, so, I mean, is Canada a monoculture? Or is it a combination of different cultures, And we talk about multiculturalism, there have been a lot of debates what that really means. Okay?
I think, my question was before I came here. And generally whenever, especially recently, when I hear the word multiculturalism, what does it mean? Is it only ethnicity on the skin level? Is it actual culture? Is it national representation? Is it just based on food? Is it based on ideology, politics? It's such a dense word that we haven't been able to describe, I don't think.
No, it's a bit of all that, and let's not get into that because that's opening up the audience table, that kind of stuff, and it's a bit of all that. But also, let's if we have to reduce that to two things, we'll try to reduce that to ethnic and social minorities. Okay, in terms of, if you're talking about minorities now, ethnic minorities in terms of their color and the rest of social minorities in terms of their lifestyles, maybe gays, lesbians, transgender, and the rest of them, because they are also as much a minority in a different context as, ethnic minorities. Okay, but the truth of the matter with the CRTC, like all regulators, is that I think to a reasonable extent, we can consider the Canadian CRTC, even more independent compared with other countries. Oh, yeah. Because in the US, it's a different thing altogether. The qualities are politicians who are appointed, to run these shows, and of course they reflect, directly, without any shame, that kind of stuff, the interest of either a Republican president that appoints them or a Democratic president that appoints them. How much of that is changing in Canada now with all the debates about, the licensing of a new mobile cell phones? That's a case still in court, they're trying to resolve because the CRTC went against that. They went against the application. The minister overruled them. And the case is in court now, and the court ruled against the minister, and the government said it's going to appeal. Then there were issues about the internet billing, that kind of stuff. So to what extent that is changing with the CRTC, we'll have to wait and see, whether that independence will still be there for a long time. But the key issue, you raised a very important question that I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around, which is, are the youths of today so dramatically different from several decades ago? And I want to think, yes, they are. I didn't grow up here, okay, and I grew up in rural Nigeria, so my own childhood experience is totally different, from maybe most of you. But when I look at what is happening now, I would think that probably 20, 25, 30 years ago, we all grew up with books. It could be comic books or whatever as kids, you come in, you have to read them, that's part of the way, it tells you stories, but it also helps you to develop your writing skills and things like that. Our worldview is pretty limited. The internet wasn't there, and people didn't really, but now kids as young as 7, have their own internet. They've got all these video games. They hardly read any books anyway, that kind of stuff. So often we get surprised, why do they write so badly? That kind of stuff. But that's part of the problem. If you don't read, you can't improve your writing. So their worldview, I think they become adults much sooner than we ever did, at our own time, because we had a much more restrictive childhood in terms of parenting, in terms of a whole lot of things.
And things are not facing them anymore because they're getting information sent to them left,
from
right,
everywhere.
and center. So they're like, man.
Kids go to the internet now. There was a case here in BC, a few years ago. Just about 2 or 3 different cases, one in Surrey, one in Coquitlam. They went to the internet and from start to finish manufactured a bomb using the step-by-step, this they got on the internet. And one of them went and placed it, in a shop, in a thrifty shop in Surrey. Somehow they fell out with each other, and the rest of them, then one of them told the police that, his friend had the bomb in the shop, in Wale. And the police went there, that kind of, exactly where they placed the bomb. I saw it in the shop. And they say it would have exploded, that kind of stuff anytime. So, like I said, how many of us growing up as 10, 11, 12, even understood what a bomb is? Not to talk about the facility, the way to make it. Going to the internet, you can find anything there.
I don't actually think that the kids are different at all as they were back then. I think that the resources and the tools they have access to, completely different, and that's changing. Yeah.
But
right?
it's impacting them.
Absolutely, that's
so
what's
the resources is
changing,
impacting them. It's not just a question of not being there. It wasn't there in our own time, but now they use that. It's impacting them. It's influencing them. The other time, that kind of stuff, we were more concerned, growing up about, okay, don't let the bad neighbor or the bad people talk to your kids. Today, a child goes into the internet. People from different parts of the world are talking to him or her. Okay, it's almost like you watch a television and these are outsiders. You don't know who they are. You don't know the kind of influences, wholesome and unwholesome, they could have on the child. And the parents are not as smart as their kids in terms of, like, you can have all the so-called safety gadgets and the rest of them, But kids are very smart when it comes to technologies. They know how to bypass all those.
They're smarter than the parents.
Yeah, when it comes to technologies, they're very smart.